From the Honolulu Police Department, we have Captain Jay Trinidad. Could you stand up and be recognized, please? And from our neighbors at Pu'uhale Elementary, we have Principal Arnie Kikawa. Is Arnie still here? Thank you so much for coming. We wanted to make sure that we had some local representation of the kinds of people that you saw in the documentary today. So we'll talk to you both in just a bit. But I wanted to talk to you first about NEWTOWN and how we had this conversation earlier on when we were talking about planning this event, and I talked to you about how whenever gun violence comes up, it tends to be a really tough issue to tackle. And I know here for us at PBS Way, we've had conversations we have a public affairs show here, and I remember the last time we talked about gun violence, we had a lot of different, it was a very heated discussion, and we had a lot of people, I think to this date it's still, this is several years ago, and we had a lot of phone calls come in from all different perspectives and across the spectrum. And so I asked you about how you said about 90, you've appeared at 90 of these screenings of NEWTOWN across the country. And I asked you if any of them got contentious, because it's an issue that people feel passionate about. And you said not really. It was pretty, the film, I think it's a testament to this film. It seems to transcend all of the, whatever you want to call it, politicized feelings of some of these issues. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, but before I do that, I just want to thank Vera and Liberty and her team for bringing me here all the way from New York. It's so meaningful to be, it's my first time in Hawaii. And it just somehow feels like a very special place to screen the film. So I wanted to start that. And also channel one of my friends, Mark, who you met in the movie, who I often travel with. And he always begins by thanking everybody, because we know what a tough film this is to sit through. And it just means so much to everyone who participated in this, and to myself, for people to bear witness to this and to participate. So I just wanted to start with that. But to answer the question, I went to NEWTOWN, I don't want to say through happenstance, but I didn't set out to go up and make a film about gun reform at all. I landed there through some relationships. Some people asked me to explore a short form piece that I had worked with in the past. And I was drawn to a story of collective grief and trauma and resilience, and what it would be like for a town like this, after the cameras left, to really completely reestablish the social fabric of their lives, and also to show something that I think is shown less, which is an entire community and the ripple effect, and what happens in the wake of this kind of gun violence to so many hundreds and hundreds of people. And there's rarely a place I go in the country where there isn't a connection, whether it be 1 degree or 6 degrees, to NEWTOWN, which is only 28,000 people. So I think the answer to that is, now that we've traveled, of course, there was a mantra early on I wanted to honor in the town, which was to not just be remembered as a place of tragedy, but as one that transformed tragedy into some kind of meaning. And I think that underlying the film, obviously, there are a lot of issues that are brought up about gun violence. There are political issues, but we really wanted the film to break through, I think, a dangerous desensitization of, even now, I don't fault anyone for this, but people forget which one that you say NEWTOWN, and they're like, they don't remember, and it's just so troubling that there have been so many there. If you define a mass shooting by 4 or more individuals, there have been over 1,200 since this event in this country, which is shocking. And I also want to thank you for your poem. That was just so right on and appropriate for the opening. I really was, incredibly moved by that, maybe because I've sat through my film so many times. But hearing someone else's art, it just was really beautiful. So anyhow, I think the film is meant to take us to open up a dialogue, to do screenings like this. I am so blessed to be working with PBS and ITVS to travel this and launch a campaign with community screenings in so many parts of the country, to open up dialogue and try to move it out of this politicized place, because one of the things we always hear is nothing happened. If this didn't change anything, nothing will. And we say that the conversation is changing. And it may be changing in places that you don't know about, which we can talk about, but it's, so I think that's a long answer to why maybe it seems the grief seems to be the great leveler. And it's hard after a film like this and taking this in for people to, get their dukes up right away, I think.
How could you describe, you were telling me earlier about how some people came up to you and responded to, after seeing your film. Could you share maybe a couple of more memorable ones?
There have been so many. I think the more interesting, we've had, as I said, circles of people who've been connected, relatives. There's been some healing within the town. We had very careful screenings at the very beginning, first in the church in NEWTOWN in different ways, showing the families first. So that's been a whole tier. But as it ripples out, I've had at least 4 or 5 occasions with men in the audience who have said, I'm an NRA member, I'm a gun owner, and you're going to reach guys like me. Because there is more of a middle in this country than I think people think around these issues. And what I'm interested in doing with the film, with my producer back in New York and others, is to bring in the voices of law enforcement and educators and doctors who you saw, and not just the parents who lost everything, which is so important to hear from, but I think the messengers of our community members who can speak to this and what to get together as community. The film is really about community. So I think, there've been just all kinds of people. People respond. I just want to open it up because I want to hear how these people respond. So.
Mm-hmm.
So questions or comments?
I want to thank you for your sensitive and beautiful portrayal of a very tough subject, and for coming here to talk about it. The title made me think that it was going to be about the entire spectrum of the victims, and you seem to have focused on the children. There were 6 adults as well among the victims, and I wondered if you could tell us why you chose that and not to mention any of the adult victims.
Well, we do mention the teachers. We do have obviously a couple of the surviving teachers who remember and honor their colleagues. We did this it was hard, as you can imagine, with trying to represent a whole town. And with 26 families, this is the type of film that I wanted to make, was to do something very intimate and different from what the news had done in the beginning, which was sort of cold calling the 26 families. And, I really didn't get in touch with these people for 9 months. It started with the priest, and it was very organic and private. Someone would introduce me to someone. I just wasn't really interested in, because then it would feel like casting, and it would be very difficult to form the kind of intimate relationships that I did over three years with 26 families. But I did feel it was important to represent the teachers and the educators who survived, who I hope convey the bravery and of their colleagues who were lost.
I mean, I'm just kind of curious, this is more like as a filmmaker, I mean, we saw specifically some story, you know, pretty in-depth about particular kids. I'm just wondering, was your experience, did you experience a fair number of families that didn't want to be a part of it or didn't want to talk about it so publicly?
Yeah, again, I didn't cold call 26 families and say, do you want to be in the film? What I did do early on was write a letter that I respected their privacy, as did the town leadership. So that letter was disseminated, and to whomever might want to be in touch. Hey, I'm here, and we're trying to do something that honors the spirit of the town. And so, you know, the hard thing about documentary filmmaking, you know, is that you can end up with hundreds of hours of footage, and invariably it's very normal that certain people who participate get cut out. And I just didn't want that either, you know, then it would feel like casting. So I had to be very deliberate about, again, this organic thing. And again, the film isn't about just the families. The whole point of the film was to recognize also the fallout for an entire community, and not to get into measuring pain and the hierarchy of pain, but I did see that one of the things that threatens tearing a town apart, you know, and I think it's the root of a lot of conflict in the world, is when people start to sort of measure whose pain is greater. And there's so much pain. I mean, the pain of the first responders is inordinate in that small town, their wives. And I just felt like it's so vast, it's so hard. So I tried to pick, you know, just some people who found me. Honestly, it was somewhat organic how that evolved.
I have a question. As you were interviewing everyone for this film, was there anything that surprised you about how, because different people handle grief differently and there are different stages of grief, was there anything that surprised you with any of the individuals about how they dealt with grief?
I just marveled every day. I was like, it was a process of just having such respect for a lot of the strength and the grace I saw of what people can get through, and what, you know, a lot of the you know, the scene with Nicole and Hugo. Hugo, I don't know how much was apparent, because he was, I never pushed anyone to be in it who didn't want to be in it, but Hugo and I had a lot of meetings before. He's actually a police officer. Coincidentally, he's an NYPD police officer. Been doing that for over 20 years. So the irony was that he was on duty in New York City, and NEWTOWN is about an hour and 20 minutes when this happened. And his son was one of 11 who witnessed everything and got out of that one room. And so his family's gone through a lot, and as well as so many of the other survivor kids. So I thought he didn't want, he really was interested in this idea of connecting with Nicole and how that had started and how important that was. So that really was pretty amazing, because it was the first time there had been any bridge made between parents who lost their kids and parents whose kids got out. It was such a, as you can imagine, difficult thing from that one classroom.
I have a factual question that I need a little clarification on. So, several people said that the kids heard everything because it was there like a speaker or something?
Yeah, no one's quite sure exactly if it was an accident or deliberate, but the loudspeaker was switched on.
So the entire school?
So the whole school, where there were 300 and some kids in there, heard everything. And when you hear it, it comes up twice in the film. And, some people feel that saved lives because in the back of the school, they knew what was happening and could lock themselves in. But at the same time, there was so much trauma from that fact.
I can't imagine how one would, you can't really prepare for something you don't know is gonna happen, but I'm just curious, how does HPD, is there sort of a plan or in place for these kinds of events? God forbid that something like this would happen here, but does the HPD have something in place for situations like this?
Yes, we do, Liberty. When you say, God forbid, situations like this from happening, who was the youngest person in here? Who's the youngest person? High schooler? You ever think this could happen in Hawaii? Do you think an active shooter situation could ever happen in Hawaii? Possibly? Okay. 1999, November, you folks know where I'm leading at, the local residents? Xerox shooting. It was on Nimitz Highway. Oh my gosh, that's Nimitz Highway right out there. A couple blocks down, it happened. 6 people were shot that day. And I know that for a fact because I was working that day. So it can happen here in the land of paradise. Liberty, in regards to your question, just like any incident, we respond. But from where I come from, the Major Events Division, we're emergency management. It's about building resiliency. So just last week, we were at Waianae High School. By their request, they had lockdown drills. They do it all the time. They wanted to test themselves out.
I know, I went to one in high school.
Yeah. We're the ones that facilitated. So in regards to response, yeah, we're gonna go, it's from Columbine, waiting for the SWAT team to respond, and we just hold the scene, those days are gone. So as far as responding, even if we preferably, I'll speak for our response, preferably more than one officer, but that officer's right there, and he's waiting for the backup, no, he or she will go in. Because what is the main objective? Stop the threat. Exactly, stop that threat. And what we do, we offer presentations. In fact, I use Waianae High School again. For the faculty, we gave them a PowerPoint presentation, and everybody thinks it's Honolulu Police Department's presentation. No, it's actually from the Department of Homeland Security. You folks know already, run, hide, or fight. Give me options. And questions will come up, like we had a question and answers session afterwards. What should we do? If this happens, folks, it's situational dependent. We cannot give you a textbook answer. We can give you responses, again, right, run, hide, or fight. So, I hope that answers the question more or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then also, do you have any other responses to seeing this film? Any sort of immediate
Very
thoughts?
powerful. It was very powerful.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks it's just police. We got to think about other first responders too. If you folks know, I think a couple months ago we did a active shooters scenario, Windward Mall. Not only us, EMS there, the firefighters are there. So again, we go in, stop the threat, but still pursuing the threat is people being injured. And folks already know. We already told them in the presentation, if you're injured, we're going to more or less bypass you until we stop the threat. But that means people are bleeding or what have you. We still have firefighters and EMS. We perform a protective bubble around them because they don't have guns. We have guns. We protect them going in. So it's a tiered response, basically.
I'm going to ask a provocative question
Go ahead.
because I'm thrilled you're here. I just came back from Florida where we did a short. We're doing a series of shorts to build on this. And of course, one of the big topics around the country is whether to ban gun-free zones and open carry on college campuses and whatnot. And I was with two law enforcement people there. And so it was a conversation about in situations like that, and since you mentioned the Xerox, this idea, I think part of the hardest conversation is everybody wants their kids safe and people have different ideas about how that looks. So there are people who feel that if more people have guns in those situations, it'll be safer. And I'm curious from your perspective, in a situation like that, when you go in and many people have guns and you don't know who the shooter is, how in your mind does that have bearing on this conversation in the country?
It's an excellent question. That adds more challenges, is that the word I'm looking for? More challenges to the situation. If everybody, folks know Hawaii, we're one of the strictest gun states. This is we get it all the time. In fact, at our main police station, that's where people register their guns. And there was a long line, people are complaining about and everything. You know, we're not lawmakers, we're just enforcing the law. In regards to that situation, again, everything is situational dependent. And when I was a young officer out in Waikiki, I remember years ago, I almost shot a kid because he had a pellet gun. And it looked like a real gun. And luckily, you know, he put it down when he was told to, but I still remember that day, you know, I almost shot a kid because of a pellet gun. You know, you had a nanosecond to decide, is this gun real or not? You know, so again, I hope that answered your question. It's situation dependent.
No,
for a textbook answer, I don't have a textbook answer to that.
it's just such an added sort of bonus and honor to have a law enforcement person here. Thank you.
There was a question.
Ms. Snyder, thanks for your marvelous film, and you asked for a response from the audience, so this is a response. I know that you feel it's about community, but I think it's a very spiritual film, and I think it's a film as much about loss as it is about community, and I thought the incandescent remark of finding beauty in the chaos was breathtaking, and you captured it, so thank you.
Thank you. That's one of my favorite lines in the film as well.
We have time for one more question. Believe it or not, the time is running out.
So when young. We're playing this in a lot of college campuses.
So mine is not a question, but also a response. I cried through the whole thing. I'm a teacher for the past 8 years, and I've taught and worked with students everywhere between kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, specifically with students with disabilities. And I went to school in Colorado, and so Columbine I remember, and the summer before, and it was referenced in your poem, was the Aurora shooting, and I was in Denver, and so I had students who had gone to this, like, that midnight showing for that show. And then 6 months later, the shooting in NEWTOWN. And I was working at a high school at that point in Denver, and I remember, because it was the 9:30 shooting in the morning in Connecticut, that we had just started school, and the principal had called a full school meeting, and the principal had a 7-year-old, and he rounded up 600 students, 9 to 12th grade, and he stood right in the middle of everyone, and he just started sobbing. And that was, I think, the first time the principal had ever shown that sensitivity and that type of emotion. And I think it's just something that everybody will remember, at least like at my school in Denver, where they were that day when they heard. And I think, like you said, it's to hear these different shootings and all these mass shootings in the media, it's really easy to become desensitized. And I think your production really shows the sensitivity to the issue and the resiliency to the issue, and that trauma still continues to be triggered throughout, and that it's really important to give names to the individuals and not just refer to it as oh, that shooting, oh, the school shooting, but really to be able to see the individual perspectives throughout. So I really thank you for that. I think you did it was a beautiful production, so thank you.
Thank you, and we also always ask that if you did find the film meaningful, to tell people not only to tune in on the 3rd, but to not be afraid. A lot of people are afraid to see this film, or they think it's going to be gory, and so it's important. If there's many things you can do. If this film has inspired you to take action, you can also follow us at NEWTOWNFilm.com, and we'll be working in tandem with ITVS with our websites to have some good resources, learning, and ways that you can engage in dialogue and action around the issue.
Do you have plans for any kind of community screenings with this film?
We have had over 1,000 since last year, and if you go to our website, there are ways you can sign up to host your own kind of town hall meeting.
And everybody is directing to me, because actually tomorrow, Hawaiʻi Women in Filmmaking is hosting a maestra class with Kim, where it's a 1 hour intense workshop where she will be sharing with us actually how to document trauma, how to use film and camera to bear witness. The event is open to the public, but you need to register because actually we have a limited number of seating. So once again, tomorrow night, Hawaiʻi Women in Filmmaking, we start at 6 p.m. at our location in Kaimuki. It's a maestra class with Kim Snyder on documenting trauma and actually using film to heal as well. One more round of applause to Kim.